Hey guys, it's Shara from Woodshop Diaries, and today I'm going to show you how I made this super simple bookshelf from one sheet of plywood and some 2x2 scraps. So if you're ready to get building, let's go. This one sheet plywood bookshelf is so easy I almost feel silly sharing it. Almost. But if you followed along for very long, you know that I love building with plywood. It saves time, saves money, and is super easy to work with. So it's hard to resist a fun building project that I can make with just a single sheet. I built this super simple bookshelf from one sheet of 3/4 inch plywood and two 2x2 boards. Now, I also used a half sheet of 1/4 inch plywood for the back, but that's a totally optional piece. I'm sharing their printable plans over on Build Something, who is also today's video sponsor, and I'll link those free plans in the description below. Now, let's get building. I started by ripping my plywood sheet down to two 11-inch wide and one 10-inch wide strip, using my circular saw and my Kreg rip cut. I recently posted a detailed video about how to quickly, easily, and accurately cut down a plywood sheet if you'd like to check that out for this and for future projects. Once the plywood was ripped into strips, I cut down two side panels, a top, a bottom, and a middle divider from the 11-inch wide strips on my miter saw. I assembled this bookshelf carcass using wood glue and 3/4 inch pocket holes with 1 1/4 inch pocket hole screws to make it quick and easy. But the beauty of building it yourself is that you can use whatever type of joinery that you prefer. Since this is just a very simple bookshelf, I opted for a quick and very simple joinery. Before attaching anything, I applied iron-on edge banding to the front edges of all of these plywood pieces and around the sides at the top as well. Then I drilled pocket holes into the top ends of the side panels and the middle divider and into both ends of the bottom panel. To assemble, I glued and screwed the bottom panel between the two sides and then flipped it over and screwed the sides into the top to make one large box. If you have any corner clamps, it's also helpful to clamp everything square until the glue dries so that you can make sure it doesn't dry up out of square. I centered the middle panel in place between the top and the bottom and attached using pocket hole screws at the top and using 1 1/4 inch wood screws through the bottom into the middle divider. You could also use pocket holes in the bottom as well, but I was just avoiding using another set of pocket holes that I had to fill later. This next step is optional, but I've been using some of these pocket hole plugs lately and they've been working really well. Since the pocket holes at the top of this piece can be seen, I flipped it upside down and used some wood glue and glued these plugs into the holes. Now, if you've ever worked with these pocket hole plugs before, you know that they're just basically a one-size-fits-all plug. So they fit well in 1 1/2 inch pocket holes, but will need to be trimmed when put into 3/4 inch pocket holes. So once the glue dried, I used an oscillating saw and flush cut blade to trim off the excess, then sanded it smooth. Now it was time to move on to building the base. The base in this project was made from 2x2 boards. I cut 4 legs, 2 short sides, and 2 long sides on the miter saw. You can see the plans for the exact dimensions. And then I assembled the base together using 1 1/2 inch pocket holes and 2 1/2 inch pocket hole screws. Two things to note here. You should assemble the short sides between the legs first, then attach the long sides between those. If you add the long sides first, you won't have enough room to get your drill or driver in to drive the screws on the short sides. Don't ask me how I know that. Also, when I'm working with 2x2s, I like to use wood glue and 1 screw per joint because if I use 2 screws, it's likely to split. So I just use wood glue and then 1 screw. Once the base was assembled, I flipped the carcass upside down and applied wood glue to the top of the base, and then I clamped it onto the bookcase carcass like shown. I also used 2-inch wood screws through the bottom of the base and into the cabinet to secure it, but at this moment I was out of 2-inch wood screws and I had to run to the store to get some. So in the meantime, I just clamped it until the glue dried and then added the screws later. This next step is also optional. If you're placing the shelf right up against the wall, you may opt to not install a backside. However, I did install a backside, and to do this I just cut a back to fit over the carcass sides from a half sheet of 1/4 inch plywood. I use my circular saw and Kreg AccuCut for this, but you can cut down this sheet however you find easiest. Don't forget, I do have a tutorial on how I cut down my plywood sheets that I will link up here in the corner and down below as well. I sanded the edges of my plywood backer and simply stapled it in place with a hand stapler. Wood glue and a nail gun would work as well, or you can just screw it in place too. When I add shelves to a furniture piece, I almost always make them adjustable because 1, I think it's easier, and 2, it gives you options later. So using my Kreg shelf pin jig, I drilled holes along the sides of the bookcase in the back and the front to allow me to place shelf pins where I wanted to sit my shelves. These shelf pins simply slide into the drilled holes and support the shelves. I trimmed 4 shelves from my 10-inch wide piece that I had cut earlier, about 1/4 of an inch shorter than the openings that I was placing them in. This just allowed me a little wiggle room so it's not scraping the sides when I put them in place. I cut 4 shelves, but you could cut more from the remaining plywood sheet if you wanted, or you can just save that piece for scraps later. Now it's ready for whatever finish you want to apply. I built these for a friend and they were finishing them themselves, so I left them unfinished here, but I think that they'd look cute with a black painted base and a light wood stain, but that's just me. If you built it, you get to finish it however makes you happy. I love that you can put one of these together from a single sheet of plywood and still have a little left over for a good scrap wood project later. So if you're ready to get building, check out the plans linked below and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on what's coming next. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, happy building!